So this is the second ripoff movie I've ever done for Blockbusters show. The first one was Sunday School Musical, and that was back on our season 2 parody movie stage of this show. So the movie we're talking about is considered one of the worst movies ever made. It's called Mac and Me, and it's clearly riding on the coattails of the Spielberg classic E.T. This movie was directed by some guy who primarily made a bunch of like lame family sci-fi movies and a lot of wilderness movies before this. This is easily his most popular movie for all the wrong reasons, mind you. Even though there's a lot of no names for the cast, with the exception of like one SNL actress, you know, I really didn't recognize anybody. There's actually some top-notch people working on this movie, like Alan Silvestri, the guy who did the Back to the Future theme, did the music for this movie. And the guy who did the effects went on to work on the effects for the Nightmare on Elm Street and Friday the 13th sequels. So, there's some talented people working on this movie, gotta give it that. Now this is the part of the video where I would do a voiceover and I would read off the IMDb synopsis, but really, it's the plot to E.T. A lot of the same plot beats from E.T. are in this. Alien lands on Earth, it's obviously friendly, it befriends a bunch of kids, the kids make sure it's safe from the government tries to get rid of or kill the alien. Eventually, the power of love and friendship prevails, and there's a lot of heartwarming moments in between. So a bunch of aliens are on their home planet. They look like they're made of ballsack skin, which, like E.T., so that's pretty appropriate. They end up getting sucked up into this Mars rover in a really bad TV show effect. Like, it does not look like something that belongs on the silver screen. Sucked up into this Mars rover, it lands back on Earth and ends up in this like NASA government base. The aliens end up escaping out of the Mars rover with their youngest getting separated, and this is going to be our ET for the movie, Mac. And it's supposed to stand for Mysterious Alien Creature, but you're gonna find out why his name's Mac quite soon. So Mac ends up hitching a ride in this van, which is being driven by a small family, of course, with a single mother, just like in E.T. We have our main kid who, instead of Elliot, his name's Eric. So they even felt the need to make the kid's name start with an E. And he has a brother. They don't have a little sister, but they eventually befriend this girl and her sister when they move in right next door, and we'll get to them a little later. All throughout the movie, we keep jumping back and forth between what's going on with Mac and this family and what's going on with Mac's family. They're in the middle of the desert, and they're slowly dying of dehydration. And really, it just boils down to them eventually going into a mine shaft where they get discovered later, and that's way later in the movie, so just remember that. They're dying in the desert. Everybody in this movie, in terms of acting, everybody is phoning it in. Everybody is not really giving their hardest, and no one really seems to give a crap. They're acting like they would in a TV movie. The one person who seemed to be giving his all, though, was, surprisingly enough, the kid that plays the main character, Eric. He was like the one character I was like, you know what, this kid, like, he was probably the closest thing to a decent performance in this movie, and a lot of people wouldn't say that about child actors, but he seemed like the one that was actually trying. So they get settled in, weird stuff starts happening with Mac, the mysterious alien creature, and, you know, it's just like in E.T. where they think something's up. The kid suspects that it might be ghosts. It takes about 40 minutes for them to discover the alien. 40 minutes. Say what you want about E.T., it did not take that long for them to discover the alien. So why do people consider this an E.T. ripoff? I mean, sure, the premises are kind of similar, but how is this an E.T. ripoff? Well, there's scenes that are blatantly lifted and just straight up ideas taken from E.T. Like, okay, instead of the E.T. phone home finger, it's Mac and his family does this. I don't know what this is supposed to mean, but this was supposed to be their version of the E.T. finger glowing. Then, just like with E.T. when they're putting Reese's Pieces to bait the alien, in this movie they put straws on the floor that leads to a Coke can, because Coke is like one of the 3 big product placements of this movie, and we'll get to that later. But it's weird because one of the other product placements in the movie very early on was Skittles. So instead of, they could have put Skittles on the floor instead of Reese's Pieces, but they went with straws to lead to Coke. They can't even rip off things correctly. So they eventually discover the alien. He's perfectly harmless. Of course, they say they can't tell the adults because they just won't believe it or they'll report it to authorities. So yeah, it's a lot like E.T. So after Mac drinks a lot of Coca-Cola, This is sadly foreshadowing. You think it wouldn't be, but yes, the product placement for Coke is actually foreshadowing something. They disguise Mac as a teddy bear, and here's where we get the huge product placement in the movie. We got Coke, which that comes back later. We got Skittles in the beginning of the movie. Then we got the big product placement of this film, McDonald's. Now there's actually a reason for this, because McDonald's funded the movie. So that's why there's a whole huge-ass dance number in the middle of a McDonald's in this film. You heard me right. There is a full-on break-in style dance sequence in the middle of a McDonald's. Ronald McDonald is there. There are people dancing in the middle of the store. There are football players. There's people dancing in the parking lot. Mac gets on the counter and is dancing in a bear suit. It's long. It's a really long sequence, and it makes total sense when you hear that this movie was sponsored by McDonald's, because this is the biggest product placement I have seen in a movie. And I have seen Meet the Spartans, and Friedberg and Seltzer are huge money whores as it is with their product placements. This was so ham-fisted. It just goes on. This dance sequence just goes on forever. And then eventually it gets broken up when the government suits start chasing after little Eric with Mac in hand, and they go through several different backyards. They end up in traffic, and then they end up in a mall, which really made me wish I was watching Blues Brothers, because that mall destruction scene in Blues Brothers is really good. Eventually they get away because the older brother and the little girl and her older sister, who not only works at McDonald's, but you know as soon as she walks on screen that she's going to hook up with Eric's older brother. You know it, because it's just so predetermined by hack movie writers. But yeah, they escape in a van. The mom eventually learns from these government suits that there's an alien involved. And well, now it's just one big rat race, because now they have to find Mac's family. All the while the government and the mom are chasing after them. So then there's this scene where they're traveling through the desert and they're trying to find Mac's family, because Mac can trace them when they do this. And this is another thing I didn't expect to see in this movie. There's a lot of weird montages. Montages with music that sound like rip-offs of better artists. You know what that reminded me of? It reminded me of Birdemic 2, when they had the Kmart Holding Out for a Hero song playing. After driving through the desert, they finally come across Mac's family in this mine shaft. Then they ask the question, what if these things are dangerous? Like, they wouldn't have asked that when they first discovered the alien for the first time. Now all of a sudden we gotta ask that. They see Mac's parents dying and they're like, oh no, they're dehydrated. So what do? They give them water, right? No, here's the payoff. They give them Coca-Cola. And it actually works. You know what? It's stupid, but you know what? Movie magic. I'll take it. Whatever. Now we're near the end of the movie and they decide, how are we going to get the aliens off the planet? So they stop at a gas station to get some supplies. The aliens, like total dumbasses, walk into the store. Everyone's really uncomfortable. The government has finally caught up with them. The mom tries to hold the kids back. And then they blow up the supermarket with the aliens inside. I mean, they evacuate everybody, but the aliens are inside the store and they blow it up. And I'm willing to bet that's where most of the budget went. It clearly didn't go to the alien puppets or the alien costumes. It clearly had to have gone to blowing up that, as well as the McDonald's dance sequence. That's where all the budget for this movie went. Also, since the kid is like really up close to the explosion, he ends up dying. The aliens walk out of the fire, and it makes me wish that someone could re-edit this with the Terminator theme of them walking out of the flames. But then they do this once again, and they bring the kid back to life. So, yay, these are good aliens. We have nothing to fear. After the government has like tried to mercilessly kill them, now they're like, yeah, they're all good. So you think that, I mean, just like with E.T., they get him back to his home planet. You think that's how the movie's gonna end. No, they make them American citizens. This is like a really weird way to end this movie. So yeah, the mysterious alien creatures are now legal US American citizens, and they hint at a sequel with text on screen that says, "We'll be back." Which, no they're not, because this movie thankfully did not get a sequel. My reaction to this movie is the exact same with Sunday School Musical, which is the other rip-off movie that we did for Blockbusters. In that, it's a bad movie, but worst thing ever, I don't know if I could really say that. This doesn't feel like a theatrical movie. That's like one of the biggest problems, because, you know, most of the actors are phoning it in, the production's really cheap, it looks like a TV show production from the 80s. It feels like a TV movie. Really, the product placement is just so in your face, down your throat, and up your ass. That was bad. That was just so blatant. It reminded me of when in Wayne's World they did the whole bit making fun of forced product placement. That's what it was like. They made a whole movie off of that. With that said, whenever people say this is like one of the worst movies ever made, I don't know if I could really go that far. I kind of felt the same way about Pluto Nash. They're bad movies, yes, but I mean, Manos: The Hands of Fate, that's one of the worst movies ever made. The Birdemic movies, those are worst movies ever made. Me personally, I still think that Where the Dead Go to Die is one of the worst movies ever made. Mac and Me, it sucks, but worst movie ever, I can't really go that far. It's a really bad E.T. ripoff, I can guarantee you that. When people criticize it for being a bad E.T. ripoff, they're not lying, because this is a blatant E.T. ripoff, cash grab, filled with blatant product placement and lots of really bad effects and subpar acting. So, yeah, that is Mac and Me. Tune in next time for the next review on the Blockbuster Show in February. I'm Adam Sykes, and I will see you guys next time.